G'day mates, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kaitlyn and I'm an American learning to live down under here in beautiful Sydney, Australia. Today I have a glass of sparkling Moscato. Normally I am not a super sweet wine drinker, but I was in the mood for something a little bit sweet today. And my wine today is from Brown Brothers in Malawa, Victoria. And honestly, with how humid and warm it's been this last week, this is really refreshing. So today I want to talk about some of the alcohol differences between America and Australia, which one I think is better, and overall some facts about Australia and its alcohol that might surprise you. So getting the most common and well-known difference out of the way, Australia has a very different drinking age. Here in Australia, you only have to be 18 in order to start drinking legally, whereas in the States, you actually have to be 21, which is kind of surprising since over in the States, you only have to be 18 in order to buy cigarettes, in order to take out personal loans in your name, before you have to start filing taxes, before you could sign up for the military. You have to be 18, but for some reason, across the country, America's drinking age is legally 21. And regarding the alcohol in the States, a lot of it is monitored from state to state. So there are some states where you can go into a Target and you can buy pre-mixed drinks. You can buy different kinds of alcohol, liquor, spirits, beer, wine. Whereas in some states like Pennsylvania, where I'm from, some grocery stores will actually have a separate store where they sell beer, wine, and ciders, but they don't sell hard liquor. In order to get hard liquor or anything like that, you actually have to go to a specialty wine and spirit store, or do what a lot of us did in Philly and just drive over to Jersey because everything's in one spot in Jersey and it's cheaper. Now here in Australia, it's kind of similar to Pennsylvania in that you can actually buy wine and beer in some grocery stores. Kind of similar to the idea of having like a separate store within a store, but you can't buy actual like hard liquor or spirits or anything like that within a grocery store in Australia. Now, one of the things that I have talked about on this channel is just how expensive alcohol is over here in Australia. That's for multiple reasons. Not only is a lot of alcohol being brought in, which involves shipping charges, but there are 3 different types of taxes that alcohol normally has to go through. You have customs, you have excise, and then you have the WET, which is the wine equalization tax. So most alcohols, if not all alcohols, are actually subject to these 3 different types of taxes, on top of the 10% goods and standards tax, the GST, which so many Aussies are familiar with. So there are quite a few hoops that have to be jumped through in order to sell alcohol in Australia that's imported. And it's one of the reasons why alcohol over here is just so expensive. Obviously, drinking and driving, drunk driving, drink driving as it's also called over here in Australia. I've heard quite a few terms for it. Drink driving does seem to be the most common that I've heard, but that is a little bit different than it is in the States. While it is illegal to be drunk and driving in both countries, the BAC or blood alcohol content is actually surprisingly different. In the States, it is 0.08. And over here in Australia, it is actually only 0.05, so 1 to 2 drinks depending on a number of factors. Is the actual legal BAC before you are considered not allowed to drive, although even if you only have 1, you shouldn't be drinking and driving anyway in the day and age of things like Uber, of Lyft, of taxis, of easily accessible public transport in a lot of places. There's really no reason to be drinking and driving at all. So one of the biggest, I guess, culture shocks I have whenever I go to a pub over here is if I order a cider. I'm typically not a beer drinker, so sometimes I will get a cider, and I went up to the bar one day and just asked for whatever one they had, and they're like, do you want a pint? Do you want a schooner? And poor me is looking at the bartender like, well, what in the world are you talking about? And like, just the smallest one, whichever that one is. So over in America, if you go to a bar, typically what you ask for is beer, either what's on tap, something in a bottle, or something in a can. Those are pretty much it. There are no schooners or pints or stubbies or long necks. There seem to be so many names that if you're not used to it, it can be a little bit confusing if you come over here to Australia and you want to go to a pub and just get a beer. On top of all of that, it's not even consistent between some states. So some states the schooner's the same, whereas others it's a little bit smaller, some it's a little bit larger. For example, I haven't been to Adelaide yet, and if anybody is from Adelaide, let me know down below if this is true, because obviously you can't trust everything you read on the internet. But if you go to Adelaide, typically what a schooner is in the rest of the country is what they call an imperial pint. And if you want to just pick up a bottle of beer, as we call it in the States, they do come in different sizes. What's called a throwdown or a twist top in some areas is 250 milliliters. A stubby over here, which I still kind of laugh at a little bit because it just sounds dirty to me. But anyway, a stubby over here is 375 milliliters and a long neck is 750 milliliters. And throughout most of Australia, if they ask for a schooner or a pint, a schooner is typically the smaller one. That's about 475 milliliters, whereas a pint is 570 milliliters. So if you guys are liking this video so far, please hit the like and subscribe button down below to join our little Amer-Australian family. I post on Mondays and sometimes Thursdays about the differences between American and Australian culture and the overall process of learning to live down under. And it's not just beer and cider, but shots are sold differently here as well.
I gotta have some of that. No. See, this was aged for 1,000 years. The barrels built from the wreck of Grunhill's fleet is not meant for mortal men.
Neither was Omaha Beach, Bundy. Stop trying to scare us. Come on.
All right.
Excelsior.
Shots over here in Australia are a little bit smaller than they are over in the States. So even though the alcohol is more expensive, if you go and order like just say a gin and tonic or a Jack and Coke, you're not going to be getting as much alcohol in that drink as you would at a bar in the States. The size of a shot in Australia is 30 milliliters, whereas over in the States is anywhere between 30 to 45, depending on the type of shot glass that they use and depending on how well you know the bartender. Especially if you go to some of the smaller dive bars over in the States, especially the places that are cash only, like shout out to Dirty Frank's over in Philly, because I absolutely loved going to that bar with my friends. It was like one of those cash only dive bars that was super, super cheap. And they were very, very generous pours over there. So in Australia, a shot is 30 milliliters standard, whereas in the States, it actually does vary a little bit. While there is no standard size for a shot glass over in the States, it's typically about 1.5 ounces, whereas over here in Australia, it's 1 ounce or 30 mils compared to 45 mils. I'm still getting used to the metric system. So even though Australian wine isn't that popular over in the States, one of my past videos I mentioned you could pretty much only get 3 or 4 labels if you typically go to the store. Those were Yellowtail, Fisheye, and 19 Crimes. Australia is home to over 2,400 wineries and 60 wine regions all throughout the country. And it really is a shame that more Americans don't get to try the variety of wines that are over here. While there are 2,400 wineries over here in Australia, there are 11,000 wineries operating over in the US. But I think when you factor in the population size and difference, like per capita, Australia actually does have more wineries technically, and is a larger wine producing area per capita. And honestly, they're just better. If you are not a wine person and are a little bit more into spirits, there are over 333 distilleries over here in Australia. And they make everything from rum, gin, whiskey, vodka, you name it, they do make it here. Australia is also a very large beer producing country. In 2020, there were over 294 registered breweries over here in Australia, which honestly, compared to the brewing companies in America, seems very, very small, with over 8,700 craft breweries over in the States. Craft beer has become this huge phenomenon over there. Honestly, I can't really get behind it. I am not much of a beer drinker, but seeing more independent breweries and beer companies popping up in the States has become a huge trend over the last 5 to 10 years. And speaking of beer, I know a lot of Aussies might laugh at this, or they probably even know it already, but the most popular beer sold in Australia is VB beer. And the most popular beer in America is actually Bud Light. So while Tito's homemade vodka is actually the most popular alcohol sold over in the States, there's actually no data to show what's the most popular alcohol sold over here in Australia. However, both countries do have a national drink or a national spirit or alcohol, whatever you want to call it. Over here in Australia, it is the classic Bundy rum or Bundaberg rum. And over in America, it is actually Kentucky bourbon. Not any one brand in particular, just bourbon in general. So that's it for this video, you guys. I hope you liked it. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button down below to join our little Amer-Australian family. I post on Mondays and sometimes Thursdays about the differences between American and Australian culture and the overall process of learning to live down under. My name's Kaitlyn, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers!